with that, I'm going to go into introductions. My name again, Adam Asness. I'm the CEO founder of Lingoport, and we run these webinars almost monthly. We haven't figured out January yet because we just had a cancellation, but we'll have something good, I'm sure. Now, I'm going to introduce first Renato Beninatto. He is the maven, I like to say, of the industry. If you don't know Renato, you need to know Renato. So go find his LinkedIn and connect to it if you haven't already. He's kind of the center of the localization universe. I think that's enough to say about you. Luz is somebody very special to me. She's one of our most interesting and forward-looking clients at Lingoport. She runs a lot of automation. She leads localization at Motorola Solutions. Moving on, Marco Trombetti. He's another person you absolutely should know within the industry. He's making a lot of impact. He's getting covered by little-known magazines like Economist. I'm being facetious there. His launching of Lara as a LLM specifically tuned AI for language versus just a general AI is I think very important for our industry. And then we have Georg Ell. He's the CEO at Phrase, a very well liked and very fast moving TMS in the industry, partner of Lingoports as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, Renato, turn my camera off. And again, write those questions as they come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for being so generous. And what you forgot to say is that we have been friends for over 25 years, and this is why you are so good and so nice to me. But anyway, thank you for inviting me again. And this has become an annual tradition where you invite interesting people from the industry to talk about what has happened and what we're thinking about the industry at this arbitrary time that we decide to define that it's the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new cycle. And I'd like to start by asking Luz, you being on the client side, one of
Yes.
the challenges that we all try to understand is what are the highlights inside an organization like Motorola when it comes to localization in a year that has seen so much change and so much technology innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Renato, and thank you, Adam, for the kind introduction. So let me talk to you a little bit about the expectations from the client point of view. It looks like large language models offer an incredibly opportunity for early linguistic quality evaluation. That's what we are looking into. And by that, what we mean really is knowing the quality of a translation the moment we receive it. And by using AI, specifically LLMs, we are talking about being able to automate that step and to get QA even further upstream. In our particular case, that's important because our cadences for testing are too far apart, and normally we get that feedback on linguistic quality a little bit late, if you ask me. And we still rely, don't take me wrong, we're still going to be using human testers. We're still pretty much using human translators. Nothing changes on that point of view. It's just that we are going to be able to use their abilities earlier in the life cycle. And so the expectation is, of course, to have the tools that actually enable us to implement such pipelines. And we're very excited. We are in a very early state. I remember I had a conversation with Marina Pancheva. Everybody knows her.
From
She
RWS, yes.
opened my eyes on how to interact with LLMs. Incredibly grateful for that. And I remember one comment she made. It's like, oh, really? Because I thought that I could do this in a month. oh, well, no, you cannot do that in a month, right? And you need more people, you need more brains working towards this initiative. And she mentioned that it's like, yeah, we have this team, I don't know how many people, and they were working on that. And she's right, it's not something that is going to happen overnight, but I think the opportunity is there. The promise of being able to do such a thing is there, and we definitely need to take advantage and to explore and make sure that the solutions that we have in mind, we have a way to implement them, to see them through, and to benefit from that. So yeah, I know it's maybe too much to ask, but we're very hopeful that we can actually do something like that.
So, Georg, if I hear from Luz correctly, is that so we're 2 years into this AI journey since GPT came out, and there was a lot of hype in the beginning. Now we have 2 years in our pockets, and what I hear Luz saying is that we're still doing baby steps. There is not full deployment of the even on a technology-driven organization like Motorola with a lot of resources and capabilities, AI is not fully deployed in the localization space. What do you see in your environment, and what do you see it moving forward?
Thanks, Renato. I think we had a lot of hype 2 years ago, actually then followed by a certain degree of fear and uncertainty. And so one of my highlights for 2024 is actually, I think the industry has become more confident and comfortable with the adoption of LLMs in a whole range of different scenarios, and confident that these are going to be empowering technologies for our industry rather than destructive technologies for the industry. So that's kind of my broad highlight, and I think we'll see a lot more of that in 2025. I think from our perspective, we see LLMs playing and AI playing important roles at all stages of the life cycle. So Luz mentioned quality assessment. Well, that is absolutely one of the core investments that we've been making for a long time, where we have real strength. And quality assessment can take place in real time the moment that words arrive, but you can also do deeper linguistic quality assessment, and we have AI-powered technology solutions there. So instead of LQA human-powered taking a day for 10,000 words, you can do it in 60 seconds and then have the human review that output. So it's a co-pilot experience, and those kinds of things are really interesting to both enterprises and LSPs, because you can either do more volume or better margins, and as to Luz's point, use the human skills actually to greater effect. I think we also see LLM, and I know you're going to ask Marco about this, with amazing things that Lara is doing. We see that whole kind of transcreation area as being one that LLMs are starting to have real impact, and I think it's going to get really exciting in 2025. So you can do machine translation that is demographically tuned at the moment of creation. So an example we've worked on for a while is a women's health network, where to actually machine translate a large body of English language content to other languages around the world, you have to be very nuanced and sensitive to speaking about medical things, body things. And it's different when you talk about a young woman in a, say, UK or American society versus a woman of a different age in a more conservative society, right? And you don't want to get those things wrong. So how can you use the creative power that you don't get from neural machine translation, but with guardrails, so you manage that for a high quality outcome? And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in 2025. So yeah, I just came from a meeting with analysts talking about exactly this, and they said, "Are you seeing large scale applications of this yet?" And I said, "Absolutely, right across our customer base." And there is a range of degrees of adoption and so on, but we're moving past just the bleeding edge into the leading adopters, and I think it will go much more mainstream next year.
Marco, what's the story? You using Georg's words here, leading edge and bleeding edge. You seem to be always having these conversations. You recently launched Lara, this new platform, including a mixture of your own LLMs and whole combination of features, combining machine translation and features of AI, but also you have been in the launch of this new product. You had people from NVIDIA talking about how they're using translated and incorporated your technologies into their products. What can you tell us about what has happened in 2024 and how you're seeing us going into 2025?
Thanks, Renato. First, I'm quite happy about what's happening around the excitement there is on artificial intelligence, on LLM, and the opportunities that there are in the translation business. And also we're happy about the results that we achieved. We were going through an adventure last year. There was the around the world race that many people follow within the industry. And then we had to find a new, bigger challenge. And this time we decided to go for building a new architecture for translation. And that's Lara basically is putting together the flexibility, the fluency of a language model, and the extraction possibility of a language model, together with the accuracy of a translation model. And we trained, probably the largest model ever created for translation, and added two things basically. One is context capability, the fact that the model is not translating sentence by sentence anymore, but it's actually able to understand the full document and even receive contextual information from the outside that you can provide. Okay. And the second thing that is something we care a lot about is the explainability. When I use Google Translate, I like it. My problem is simply that I don't know when it's doing a good translation or a bad translation. So it's not that it's always bad, it's that I don't know. And so I cannot trust the system for all my application. I cannot trust machine translation because I don't know what's going on. So we wanted to create a machine that is able to communicate its limitations, telling you if he has any doubt, why the translation could be wrong, if it needs a clarification, if he uses a term and not another one, explaining why the machine did that. And so that two things were combined together with the product. And then the first time that Translated offer now also a product for consumers and SMB, because all this technology, we've been working on this technology for many years, but we always gave this technology to enterprise customers. And many people are customers of Translated, they just don't know. You will find it integrated in many big tech, what we do. And so for the first time now we're giving this to users so that everybody can use it. And obviously now we're supporting the enterprises, and we're doing even more. So I see a lot of interesting things happening and in this space, and I'm very excited. But I have to say that in the last year, I think that the first thing when people see AI, the first thing they think is that how do I save money with this? Okay. And that's just it's the first phase. We need to do it, but it's not the interesting part. The interesting part is how can we do more? And there is such a big need of translation in the world. Every single piece of content in the internet should be available to anyone. And so we need to go from having sites translated in 2 languages to everyone should be in 200 languages. And every single thing on social media should be translated for everyone. And so there is so much to do that I think this is the interesting part. And so my hope for 2025 is this: seeing people that are willing to embrace AI, not to save money. That's just the little thing. That's the true benefit will be what we will be able to do with AI and translation industry as such big and latent demand. Then I'm sure we will have a lot of fun.
Perfect transition to my next question to Luz. Luz,
Yes.
in the enterprise, the conversation is always about the classic triangle: quality, time, and
Cost.
cheap, fast, and good, right? And Marco is talking about the traditional focus on the cost reduction, and so on. Is it still the biggest challenge for you? Is this the reason why there is a drive to use technology, or are there other business problems that you're trying to solve with the implementation of AI in the localization space?
Absolutely, absolutely. And yes, cost is very important. It's absolutely important, right? But I couldn't agree more with Marco. It's not always about the money. It's what else I can do with the same resources that I have right now. Can I scale? Can I take on more projects? That's what in our particular case is all about. How scalable we are as a localization team to help other development teams to add more repositories while maintaining a good quality standard. So I'm in sync with Marco. Yeah, it's definitely not just about saving costs, but also what else I can do with the same resources that I have. And I do believe this is an opportunity. This is the use of this technology presents an opportunity to do so.
It's the challenge is uh, can I scale more, right?
Yes.
That's the idea, right? And it's very interesting because we here at Nimdzi, we often have these conversations with our clients, and especially there's a lot of fear of the replacement. And I think that, Georg, when you mentioned the concept of destruction, was the big fear that we had, was how AI is going to destroy the industry. And what we see is the power of, and combining with what you said, Marco, is the power of adding more capacity, right? We have an expression in Portuguese which is a little gross, is when we talk, and I like to say that what we translate in the industry is what we describe in Portuguese as the fly on the shit of the horse of the bad guy in an old movie, right? It's a very, 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 it's something that is really insignificant. It's less than 0.01% of all the content that is created is actually translated. And I see the opportunity of technology like this is to offer a lot more access to content. Do you track, Georg, in Phrases platforms volume that you process? Can you see an increase in the volumes that you're processing through your platforms? What data can you share with us that you have seen from changes in behavior because of these new technologies?
Yeah, it's the saying, by the way, is a great example of why localization matters, right? You would not literally translate that Portuguese saying into English. You you might say tip of the iceberg or something like that.
Something like that. Yes.
Yeah, I think that just also to build on the previous points, there's so much power here. I had the opportunity to go to OpenAI's headquarters in March and came back with complete conviction about the power of these technologies to improve innovation at our company. So I gave ChatGPT access to every single employee at Phrase and training. And what I said to them is, look, for every 100 people we have, if over time we can all become 10 times more productive, then I compare that superpower versus maybe I could take the opposite thing and I could go from 100 to 80 people. So I can save 20, or I can get the power of another 900 or another 1,000, right? 10x the first 100. Which of those two do you really want in a highly competitive space? So, our view is you could take, we think about using these technologies in every aspect of our business. And I would encourage, anyone listening to do the same thing. It's incredibly powerful. But this is true for the work of localization teams as well. So, you can write business cases internally that talk about how the tip of the iceberg or the fly on the horse's thing of learning and development content has been localized. Now, what if you could enable all of the people to be the very best people they can be? But also, what if you could hire people who didn't have to speak English in languages all around the world? Right now, suddenly your cost to hire, your average salary, your fix right first time, your engagement, so many things that drive business outcomes are improved. So there's a lot of business cases that go beyond the normal website localization, product localization, that I think are so interesting. And in terms of what we're seeing use of MT, use of AI seriously drive volumes very significantly, because we're getting into more user-generated content, into gaming, like massive volumes in gaming. We're now working with some of the literally the biggest games in the world here at Phrase. And then we're starting to see people want to do more real-time multilingual generation as well, and to build towards a vision. So I'll give you our vision, which is maybe out there, but I said it a year and a half ago. Some people may have seen a video on LinkedIn. It's still on my LinkedIn. And it's that the internet should ultimately be streamed in real time. And I'll answer the humans in the loop point here, which is that when you think about volumes growing astronomically, right? So if we all go to the same website, today we see, broadly speaking, maybe a localized version, or depending on the device, but that's it. And if we go 10 minutes later and 10 minutes later, and the next day we see the same thing, websites can be and will, I think, one day be streamed in real time down to the user. So that means that there is no canonical version, and volumes go through the roof. And so what that means is that you have to start to think about the balance of quality and risk in a completely different way. And so our industry has talked about quality for a long time, which was important because the tools and the technologies actually weren't good enough. And as we see with Lara and other things, now they're becoming really good enough. Now, when you have very, very high quality, you get very, very low error rates, but a small percentage of a very large number is still a large number. So what I see is total content volumes in the industry may have done a bit of this in 23, 24, but they will recover and then they will explode. And so the percentage of human in the loop work will go down dramatically, but the absolute value will actually continue to increase. And the value of the human in the loop will move a little bit away, in my opinion, from quality, with the possible exception of generating the first brand guide definitions in the first place. What makes Nike different from Adidas is still going to be a human decision. But in general, about risk reduction, risk mitigation, getting there quickly, and that will have implications for business models and other things. But it does shift, I think, a conversation, or it adds a risk-based conversation to a quality-based conversation in our industry.
I love that point that you make, Georg. And Marco, you when you presented Lara, you were talking about the different levels of errors that you have tracked over time and how we're driving down these numbers. What is the error rate of machine translation, the error rate of a regular translator, the error rate of the top 1% of translators, and the error rate of Lara, right? And I don't remember the numbers by heart, but your goal is to get to 2.5%, 2.5 errors per 1,000 words or something like that, right? Is that the goal?
Oh, so we are, yeah. Please do the question, clarify.
But the question is essentially this: is this because there are errors and errors. What Georg is talking about is what errors matter, right? 2.5 errors that are a spelling mistake in I don't know, in a sign on the beach might not be as important about a word mistake in a medical device, right? These are risk challenges that we have. We need to understand what is the risk of a mistake within the certain context. So tell us a little bit about what that means moving forward, because the cheap defense, and I think that one of our followers here, Peter, is asking a question around this human in the loop, and we go into this process question, but it's not about the process anymore. It's about the context, right?
Yes. So let me clarify first the numbers. And we always compare AI with human quality, okay? And that's a big mistake. And I think, well, I'll tell you why in a second, but sharing the numbers. So last year, machine translation on conversational task, so something very simple text. This is not medical translation, it's not legal, not deeply technical, it's conversations between users. The simplest form, I think, in content, but contains also a lot of errors, etc. So the machine needs to be good at generalizing what it means. The machine last year was making about 12 errors per 1,000 word. Okay, that was what Google, DeepL, modern MT, our technology, basically neural machine translation, they were all in plus or minus that range. And so with Lara, after combining LLMs with neural machine translation, we went to 2.5 errors per 1,000 word. And now 2.5 errors per 1,000 word on conversation is less than the average professional translators. The average professional translator today is making 4 errors per 1,000 word on that task. So when we say is AI comparable to human, etc., what kind of human? You know, the average human, me, I don't speak Russian. Google Translate was better than me 10 years ago. So if you say the average professional translators, well, last year we're not, now we are. But if you look at the top 1% of the professional translators, they make 1 error every 1,000 word. And so, and we see this coming. When you do the scaling laws, you know that if we make a model that is about 10 times bigger Lara, and we're able to provide about 4 times more data, quality data with the same level of quality, but 4 times more data, we should be able to hit that target. So we know we're working on that. And I think that I consider that as a solver problem. So I think that is, we're talking about conversational content, okay? So if you take software UI, that number is 3 times more. So we are behind, years behind, but it's only a matter of years. So it's not that there is something that stops us from achieving that. So this is a solved problem. And I call this era the pre-language singularity era. And it's a very sad area where we all work to try to minimize errors. But that's not really how you create value. If you buy a book, you don't buy the book by the number of errors that are in the book. You assume there is almost zero or something negligible that you don't. It's not the point. The point is how interesting the content is, how emotional the content is for you. And so there is the real economy of content, of multilingual content, is about what we do with this content, how much this content is engaging with people. And so right now we're still in the era where we count the errors, qualitative things about, but now the future looks very different. And why I'm super interested in that future, because that it took me a while to accept this, but we're just the most sophisticated species on this planet. We're not the benchmark, absolute benchmark for intelligence. In nature, there's nothing that says that our brain is the maximum expression of intelligence possible in the universe. Instead, there is no law in physics that said that, and actually there would be intelligence way better than us. And this, so technically, we'll be able to translate things in a way better way with less errors than humans. Now, the problem on the same time is that language is the most human thing we have, and it evolves with us, and it truly represents us. And so this is a conversation, what we're doing truly to engage with our humans. And so you really have to connect on a way different level with people to try to move them from one decision to another. So these two things are now coming. So on one side, we will have infinite intelligence, and so we're able to solve any kind of errors you will find. At the same time, will we be able, with AI, to truly engage with humans and have them to change a decision about an important stuff, and try to communicate how beautiful and interesting a certain product is if it's not another human telling you that, okay? And so these things are not things that interest me, and I don't have a solution. I don't have an idea of what is going to happen, but for errors, they will go to zero. It's just a matter of time. But then I think we will get
what is zero error, right? Because there is an error of judgment. There is an error of there are other errors that are not just the language, spelling, or grammar, or just those type of errors, right? There's human stupidity comes into play also sometimes.
Even if you put many humans in the same room, and you're trying to find a common agreement, they will never find it. There would always be an element of error, because our representation of the world is different based on the experience we all had. But otherwise, we're all voting for the same president. We're all marrying blonde or brunette wife. So it's the diversity is what makes us human. It's the beauty, and that beauty that diversity is also creating the evolution and everything we have here. So in a certain way, it's very interesting to see how this evolves. So I'm quite positive about the opportunities out there for humans, The problem is that no, we have to understand some of them, and how they look like, what they will be, etc. is not clear.
So, Luz, you are certainly bombarded with calls and conversations from all types of people in the industry. What has caught your attention recently? Something that has made you mentioned, and Paula Hunter is asking us about what specifically you learned from your conversation with Marina Pancheva. What has caught your eye? What is something that you're bringing with you into 2025 that you'd like to pay more attention to?
Wait, so two things. Let me start. Something that I hear over and over and over is how to manage expectations. As Marco was saying earlier, yes, there is a push. Okay, so let's do this if it saves us some money. So, and that is where you need to be able to explain that this is not necessarily the silver bullet. Is part of the solution, is an important part, but it's just we're not there yet. I love the fact that Marco believes that we're going to get to a point where we have zero errors. It's a good state of mind to dream, and to dream big, to dream that is possible. Because even if you don't get there, anywhere near there is always going to be better. Now, about my conversation with Marina, so I was lucky enough to attend Gala in Valencia. She had this presentation about how to tame your LLM. And she opened my eyes at prompting engineering. All the information that she provided in that presentation gave me the tools to ask the right questions to our team in Motorola, the one that is responsible for deploying these LLMs, to ask the right questions and to basically not waste their time asking very basic questions. So that was one part. I was lucky enough that she agreed to have a couple of additional conversations with me. She's lovely, and she knows so much about prompting, about why you need to have different prompts from different for each of the different locales that you handle. Yeah, by the way, that would be another expectation from the client side. Tools that enable us to have different prompts depending on the specific language. So and the I would say the way that she explains things doesn't make you feel like, oh, you're an idiot, you don't know this. So it's refreshing, honestly. When I find intelligence and kindness in the same people, is gold. Is definitely gold. So yeah, in summary, sorry, I'm talking too much. I would say prompt engineering and awareness that the same prompt doesn't work for every language.
Georg, I would ask you along the same way. I mean, we're talking a lot, we tend to focus on language, the language part of localization, but what Phrase does is much more than that. You are managing the whole process of localizing content. One of the things that you talked about is the capacity to bring transcreation upstream. And actually, one of the things that I find fascinating is that some people advocate that LSPs should go upstream and start selling content services. And that area of business is one that is being more affected by AI than localization. It's the one that is tending to disappear much faster. But what other areas of localization are you seeing the impact of AI being more impactful? What other areas have you seen the impact of AI in the localization process?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think that the future, particularly for enterprises, for companies that are trying to, get the 10x business impact, is it's actually a complicated one to achieve that impact, which goes to, Luz's earlier comment at the very beginning that you can't do these things kind of quickly. It actually requires skill sets. It requires a lot of planning. It requires, in the end, a lot of integration of different data sources in order to be able to generate the sort of hyper-personalized experience that we talk a lot about. We did an event with an LSP partner of ours, Sepratech, in Spain, in Barcelona, together with Nimdzi at AWS's headquarters there. And the whole theme was around hyper-personalization. And, one of the things that we often think about is that, what does the company know about the individual? And then the piece I always try to add is, what does the company know about itself in order to give that individual, dynamic pricing, stock availability? What does the company want to tell it's in its storyline to the individual, and then how does that individual want to hear it in that moment? And so I think when you really take topics that in a sense are old, like automation and personalization, and you just take them to the extreme new capability spectrum that AI offers, then we get into hyper personalization, hyper automation. And I think this is very much something in which the whole language ecosystem has to work together. And that's an area where we've spent the last 2 years at Phrase changing our internal culture, changing our product roadmap, changing our go-to-market, and changing the relationships we have with partners to be very explicit about the fact that we actually don't want to be and don't see ourselves as the alpha and omega that provides all of this to a customer, that actually, in order for the customer to get the best value from this complex environment and the workflows and the quality assessments that's required and all of the strengths of different engines and so on, the ecosystem needs to work together. So we now are finding that there are LSPs building a Phrase practice within the LSP. And we have LSPs that are building their own software, which integrates with our software because they add value on top of what we do. And we love that and we welcome it. In fact, we're actively investing, even we haven't announced it just yet, but we're actually doing a co-investment together with one particular LSP to do more of this kind of work. And so we're trying to think very differently at Phrase about changing the paradigm of sort of us versus them in terms of technology and LSPs, and actually it's us and them. Let's take the positive side of the polarity and see where that can take us, because there are real skills required. And then, I think AI opens up dramatically new and exciting use cases. So hyper-personalization, fine. I was trying to think of something maybe that I haven't thought of before. Literally, I just wrote it down 5 minutes ago. Imagine if you had a terrible event happen in a country, right? It's not hard to imagine these days. And your website that's normally full of positivity and so on, you might want to change the tone of that website very quickly because it's suddenly, because there's a natural event or, something else has happened. You might want to very quickly change the whole tone of that website and adapt it on the fly to the national mood or local events or the individual's reaction to that. And AI allows us to do things like that. I think not maybe yet, but it will soon allow us to do things like that in a way that any kind of neural or deterministic model simply could not. I think you could think about adapting the complexity as well as the content to the user based on demographic information about that user, like, for example, seniority. So you might say someone with 1 year's experience gets a message in a different way to someone with 10 years experience receiving the same message. That is the sort of thing which, to the work that Marco has been doing, where you can bring context in. You want context, you want consistency, you want tone. AI opens all this up. So ultimately, I see that the role of the localization teams and the localization managers can be, and our industry, frankly, can be elevated if we all are, to Luta's point, ambitious enough to really think about, the business impact we can have in a really creative way and show the business why adopting AI is, to Marco's point, I'm just copying everyone else, about a lot more than saving costs. So that's where I see, the impact in more ways, and it's not just Phrase. We're an important part of the program, but we're not the whole thing. We have this ecosystem mindset.
I love the way you're positioning this, and it's a good transition. I wanted to ask you, Marco, this and it goes together with the new roles that people start playing, and what you're describing, Georg, this new the role of the localization manager, the role of the translator, the role of the people in the industry is changing, has to change. there is, and one of the questions this Peter Tatsishev is asking us is, there is this transitional role of the translator who is the victim and is at the end of the process and is losing a lot of money. And I see that Luz is nodding. But Marco, how do you see the people part of this process changing in the next few years? Because we are in a let's rearrange how things are done type of moment in the industry. So there is uncertainty, there is fear. I have my opinion, but I'd love to hear yours. You're muted, though.
Right. There is fear, and this is a human bias we have. We tend to have more fear than is needed. Okay, so if we use the brain 100%, we can remove part of that irrational fear. But there is a truth. There's a truth that things are changing faster than ever, and technology is creating more value, is creating more opportunities, but the polarization of the wealth is happening. And so there is a strong polarization. And I see that if I look from every layers, the translators, those that have been embracing AI now are making 3 times more. Those that refuse it, now they're too slow, too low quality. They lost almost all their volume. And even between the people that embraced AI, and so they were making way more money, many of them are unhappy. Are unhappy because the work changed to something that is not what they love. I mean, if your job becomes just correcting errors from a machine, you're just getting the negative part of the work. You're not getting the pleasure of the creativity element of creating things, stuff. And so this, to me, is a big problem that is out there. And if we don't find new way of working with AI in a better way, more symbiotic way, then I think we may lose the top talent that we have in our industry from the translator side. And so there is an opportunity. The people that are embracing technology are doing great things, but then we need to invent new ways of using their brains in the best way to give them satisfaction from their work. The other layer is basically localization teams. Well, I see there is a lot of pressure. And this, to me, I could not understand it, because if we invented the transformer in our industry, this was designed to do translation. How is it possible that everyone in the localization industry considered that as an external element, something that is coming from outside? And I think because there is some technical skills now required to use it properly, and those technical skills were not in the teams, but they have everything else that is needed in order to take advantage of that, using it, improving it, etc. So I truly hope that localization teams will become more innovative. They will take on new challenges, embracing technology and embracing the state of the art, and trying to build a new solution on top of that. Because I do think that yes, engineering now is putting a lot of pressure on these teams, saying, "Hey, I can do that." But the reality is not. This is still highly a linguistic task, and the technology will become a commodity at one point again, and we will have instead people that think how to go global, what really culture is, and how to connect people. And so resist. I think that's the thing for 1 year, and then embrace technology the best you can find. Lara, by the way, no, there are many around. There are many. And embrace those technology, redesign the workflows so that you truly can capture all the information that now an AI can handle. Because we're no longer in the translation memory era where we were breaking down into sentences and sending the translator the delta, because it was in the brain of the translator all the context, so it will translate that sentence anyway. Now you can inject all that knowledge into a model, and we can change the processes in order to do that. And these are the kind of things I would love to do with phrase, for example, trying to redesign the workflow so that we make sure that we can capture all the information within the company to make sure that we pass that to the localization process. And I think so. My hope is that there will be brave people that take these challenges and they will move the industry forward. And because I think that the future is the future where there will be more global content, there will be more opportunities, and people needs what the localization industry provides. And so we really just have to make sure that we control that future.
Luz, inside Motorola, what kind of jobs have appeared since in the last 2 years?
Well, our team hasn't really changed that much. We're working on trying to polish the titles and the job descriptions to give people opportunity to develop new skills. LLM, using LLMs, that's going to be a skill, and that is going to be an important skill, I believe, moving forward. But what has changed is the enthusiasm to explore certain areas. Just recently, we were talking about that. Okay, so yeah, we're going to tell a LLM, okay, what do you think about this translation? It is correct? It's not correct? Blah, blah, blah. What if we are able to extract every string in software is rendered within a container, right? Could be a button, could be a drop-down list. What if we're able to extract the space constraint within that UI, pass it as a metadata or as a context to an LLM, and we can actually ask, is this translation correct? Will it fit in this container? And if not, suggest a shorter translation. That's way down the road. This goes with the lines of dreaming big, but that's the part that has changed in our team. Now we have members with the skill set, the enthusiasm to explore those areas and to come up with ideas and solutions. And I think that's what is really changed in our team.
Well, this is the kind of what we're talking about is changes in behavior and attitude and things that we need that you cannot learn in school. Is the things that come from being able to adapt to new environments as we move forward. So I personally, I believe that we are in moments of changes where you bring out the best of people, where you bring out the best. Is like Marco mentioned, I tend to fight this fear and flight reaction that the industry tends to have, and I tend to see more opportunity. One of the things that I like to indicate, Georg mentioned that he visited OpenAI recently. OpenAI hired a localization manager this year, so they also need localization. AI, even them, are not using it for a blank replacement of the function, right? So
I can categorically confirm that OpenAI uses localization software.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Can I add a small coda just to what the others were saying as well about the human piece, because I am representing a software company, but as I said earlier, I still think that absolute volume of work for humans may grow. And I wanted to say two things that maybe I haven't heard people talk about a lot in the industry. So the first one is, I think that there is a talent shortage relative to demand. If I go to the conferences, we all see the same people quite often, right? There are sort of 1,000 people around the world that go to these conferences and know each other very well. Then maybe there's another 1,000 who don't go, I don't know. But there are now hundreds of thousands of companies whose CEOs are asking someone in that business to do something with this AI stuff around language. And most of these companies don't have the skills and the talent. So I think maybe there's an opportunity for people passionate about language to find roles in companies of all sizes and become the next wave of talent that is needed to run localization platforms. And so get comfortable with what the future is. The other thing is I always like to say thank you to the people who run IT at our company, because, you know, no one ever says thank you to them, because the only reason you call IT is when your email is broken. You don't call them to say thanks, email is still running today. And I think localization has been a bit in that mindset for a long time, where, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. Whereas we have the potential with AI now, and Lutz talked about this, to do a lot more innovation, A/B testing at scale. And that is a mindset that is a human mindset that needs to be applied to these things. And I think there are definitely roles for people with these types of mindsets. So I just wanted to add that.
Absolutely.
I'm going to just interrupt briefly a couple of points. Number one, what Luz is talking about is a type of prompting that can now happen and needs to be engineered. It's definitely the focus of Lingoport over the next year, is how can we bring prompting, not training, but prompting, so that you get the most out of the localization automation process for software specifically. It's a narrow domain where we focus, and automate that to get more power out of, get more speed and accuracy out of an LLM that's being used, rather than trying to train the LLM on
No.
my industry, my people. There's a big difference between training and prompting, as well as score those translations when they come back, so you focus the attention. I
Yes.
do think it's important what Marco talked about. The translator in the loop here needs, some translators are not going to want to be in that position of correcting versus creating. And so that's definitely a talent shortage where the person fits in that might be a consideration. We can also do a lot more to bring in our stakeholders in other countries to fulfill some of that role. That will require a different view than a translator workbench. That's important to me. So I need to go to my second point, which is I want to make sure we're just dealing with Q&A right now. We have less than 10 minutes left. There are some questions that are on the chat, not in the Q&A interface.
Oh, I didn't follow those. I think we covered in the chat most of the. I was trying to weave the questions from the Q&A into the conversation, but I didn't check the one in the chat. What do we have there, Adam?
So let's see, how long until we see enterprise and industry specific LLMs? That brings up the training bearing prompting. Won't we reach a point where the training of these LLMs becomes cost effective? How long until we are selling industry specific and client specific adaptive LLMs?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? You have your own.
So I think that you can actually do many things, many level of training, of customization of LLM, starting from almost zero cost. The problem really is that there is a race in quality, and so everybody is investing 3-4 times more the previous year. So we're not playing a game of flat quality, and so costs are dropping down. The problem is that people are expecting higher and higher quality. So we're in the race to try to get to AGI, try to get language singularity. And so investments are growing because quality expectations are growing. So it's very hard to answer this question, because if you fix what you want to do, then prices are going down, I think, at 3 times per year, 3 times less every single year. So whatever cost $1 million, it will cost 300K the year after. So we are instead trying to get more, not with the same money, but actually investing more money. In the specific case of Translated, I mean, we went from spending $500,000 of training costs 2 years ago to $6 million last year, and we think it will be 30-40 million next year, the training cost, which is something that is absolutely, out of the mind. And if I think it was 500K years ago, but why we do it is because we see these scaling laws, we see the benefit coming, and so we see what potential is out there if we achieve that goal. And so I hope this answers the question.
And did you see anything else there? I was looking at this here. I don't see, I think we discussed most of it.
I could give
And
a
now, yeah, go ahead.
a sort of another take on that question as well, which is that our view is to try at Phrase, we don't build our own LLM specifically, so we look to partner with people like Marco and aggregate, and I think that's the alternative approach, and then to think about adapting the prompts. And then having systems by which you still use language assets, so I'm one of those people that believes that language assets are still going to be important for a long period of time because they help to fine tune what the machines can do. So if you can manage high quality, nicely cleaned language assets and then do augmented retrieval, and you can use fantastic foundational models or potentially combinations of models, then you can get to very kind of specific targeted things. So I'm generally not someone that believes that there's going to be one model that sort of wins, so to speak, but more that we're going to see lots of models, and how do you manage that universe of models is one of the challenges for an enterprise, and that's kind of our approach, that we try to be the solution to that challenge.
We've got time for maybe. We've got 2 minutes, time for maybe 2 really quick questions. Renato, there's one on the Q&A interface here. I'm going to shorten that question. Metrics need to show direct value. How can AI help us identify and measure this value to the end user? I'm going to say that in UI design, there's a lot of, it's a really big decision whether you use blue or white. How do we do that same thought around language?
This is a very subjective kind of topic, right? It's hard. It's the challenge that we've had for 40 years in this industry. How do you measure something that is subjective? So every measure that we have had so far is flawed, and that's why we keep always trying to find a better one.
Well, I will say with a SaaS application, Georg mentioned A/B testing. You literally could test a tone, something like that, A/B. If you have a SaaS application where you can look at clicks and responsiveness, it's one metric. All right, I'm going to go to the next question. Are you developing, this is for Luz specifically, are you developing, training your own LLM internally or leaning on your technology and services providers? I'm going to cut the question.
Yes. So we're not doing the training per se. However, we are building our own RAG infrastructure, and we are using legacy translation as the training data for that particular RAG. So yeah, we don't really train. We just use a specific RAG for specific purposes. And so far, the results look promising. It seems like it incorporates our glossary, for example, very well. And previous translations seem to make a little bit, it seems to be moving the needle when we send translations for testing. And by the way, we're in benchmark testing right now. So we send the first round of translations just to see how it handles terminology mostly. Then we introduced the RAG infrastructure, and I think just yesterday we got the second round of testing data. So it looks promising from what I can tell. I need to go into nitty gritty and do a more thorough analysis.
You're not investing in developing your own LLMs.
Motorola is. So we're just piggybacking of what Motorola as a company is doing, and so far it's been at no cost for us. Okay. Let's see once we get into developing and testing the real prompting, let's see how much the number of tokens goes up, and maybe somebody's going to show me a bill and say, well, now it's time for you to start paying. Who knows?
Very good.
All
Okay,
right.
awesome. We're at time, and I think that thank you. I want to thank you all for this fantastic conversation that we had. Time flies when you're having a good conversation. And I think that we'll be here next year having similar conversations. It's going to be an amazing 2025 with great opportunities, great ideas, and amazing minds like you driving the industry. Thank you so much. Thank you, Adam, for hosting us. Thank you, Georg. Thank you, Luz, and thank you, Marco.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.